Jeff was always super friendly, always very outgoing, easy to talk to, and so we became close friends.
Jeff Stiles came to North Central College as a top high school runner, but he got off to a rocky start.
He was a state champion from Iowa, and so, great talent, but had a slow start to his freshman year. Just adjusting to college and new training, he started off slow in competition, but by the end of the year, he almost made the top 7 as a freshman on a team that ended up being second in the country.
As a sophomore, Jeff earned All-America honors in the 5,000-meter run and won a CCIW championship in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. He repeated as the CCIW steeplechase champion as a junior, once again earning All-America honors. As a senior, he helped lead the Cardinals to a national title in cross country, won CCIW titles at 1,500 and 5,000 meters, and placed second in the steeplechase and third in the 5,000 at the Outdoor National Championships, where North Central won another team title.
He was an incredible teammate. And there was times when he would train harder than he should to help push teammates and end up being a little more tired than he needed to be, and sometimes that would affect his races and training, but he always wanted the best for other people, and that's who he is as a person. He's an incredibly selfless person.
Jeff took that ability to push his fellow athletes forward into his career at Washington University in St. Louis, where he coaches men's and women's cross country and track and field.
And he's made Washington University into one of the very best combined men's and women's programs in the country. And it's rooted in, run for fun and personal best. It's rooted in, giving to others to make yourself better. And that's Jeff Stiles. He's had a huge impact on my life as a model, as a father, as a friend, as a coach, and just he has such a huge impact on so many people. That's who Jeff is. He's so selfless. He's always pouring into other people.
It's my pleasure to welcome Jeff Stiles to the North Central College Athletics Hall of Fame.
Al always had a saying, what good is success if you have no one to share it with? And this weekend, having friends and family flying in from California and Colorado, I'm reminded of that, and I share that with my team all the time. I come before you with a heart full of gratitude, shock, raw emotion. My dad was always my biggest fan, and he passed away unexpectedly this last spring, a couple weeks before I found out about my induction. As a result, I need to pray, so if you'll join me. Lord, it's with an overwhelmed heart, I ask you to grant me words to articulate my thoughts. In Jesus' name, amen. Lord, thank you. I want to say thank you to NCC, the committee. Congrats to everyone. Previous winners. I've seen lots of your faces on the walls. I remember growing up and just seeing you guys, and some people, I know you don't even know who, I know who you are, but I know who you are. It's a big deal. I was stunned and humbled beyond words when Al and Jim called, Jim Miller. When you're the only athlete listed that's in black and white, you know you weren't the first pick. But timing is everything. You got to get in front of the winders because they're coming. But however I'm here, and I thank God for that. I want to spend my time just saying thank you, because as Greg was so gracious to point out, my career wasn't always great. I finished last at Nationals my freshman year in the outdoor steeplechase. I didn't return to Nationals after being an All-American my sophomore year. My junior, I didn't make it back. I had ups and downs. But through all of it, it's about the people that get you there. And I want to take time, really, that's where I'm going the rest of the time, is to just say thank you. And what an honor it is to have my wife and kids here, my aunt from California, my in-laws, my best man at my wedding, flew in from Colorado to surprise me this morning. But first of all, I want to say thank you to my sister. Where's Jamie? She's the one who talked me into going to North Central. I was not a big fan of going to the same college as my sister, so I had to overcome that. She's the one who talked me into going out for cross country in high school. The night before, I was planning to go out for football, and I look at my stature, and I can't help think I made a mistake. My mom, who was always supportive regardless of the outcome, I could have told her, Mom, I ran a 4-minute mile or a 6-minute mile. She didn't know the difference, and she also didn't care. She loved me for who I was, and her words of encouragement never based on performance. Grammy, the other Hall of Fame coach, the guy that gets forgotten. Together, him and Al make the greatest coaching staff in any sport. My teammates, there are too many to mention, but just to give you a reference, kind of how shocked I was teammates with 4 individual cross-country national champions, 2 of which went a 5th year to get there. Dan Meyer was the national champ the year before I got there when they scored 32 points. John Weigel, Matt Brill, Eric Diekman, Tim McCoskey. So that's my lens, national champion. I was never a national champion as an individual. I was grateful to be on 2 teams. My best friend, Greg Hufker, who did the induction, and Eric Diekman, my 2 best friends from college, who we've since started a text thread to encourage each other as husbands and dads, in addition to staying in shape. My story about Greg and how he impacted me, the example of selflessness. I remember it was over spring break, and so we were on a different schedule, morning run, whatever, it was kind of just on your own because everyone was headed off, and we were headed to stay at his grandma's retirement home for spring break. That's where we were going. And so we were getting ready to leave at a certain time. I'd run earlier. Greg finally couldn't be there. So he's finishing his run, and I'm getting ready to go on my double. And he says, "Are you running alone?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just going to go out for an easy 4." And he's like, "Well, can you give me 15 minutes?" And so he had just finished his run for the day, and he so badly didn't want me to go by himself. He finished his run and said, "Wait 15 minutes." And we went on what was the slowest run in the history of North Central College. John Weigel, my big brother, who really helped change the trajectory of my career. I remember my sophomore track season, I had a class conflict. And he was the national champion in cross country that fall. And he ran with me occasionally when we had class conflict. And I remember he was kind enough at times to hold back, knowing he was trying to bring up the next group. He wasn't just trying to go out and win an individual title. He was more concerned about the team and the progress of the culture of the program. Then there's Al, the greatest coach in any sport. It's because of Al's influence in my life that I went into college coaching. When I was recently asked by a recruit, "What's your goal? What do you want to accomplish?" And it made me self-reflect, and my answer was this: to give the same experience that I had, something life-changing. There are 2 stories that sum up Al's influence in my life. One was my sophomore year when I had a breakup and my heart was broken, and I went by Al's office to tell him. And he hands me a book. He's like, "Jeff, I want you to read this." And I said, "Okay, thanks, Al." And I'm walking out, and he said, grabs him on the shoulder and says, "Jeff, come back, we're talking after practice." And we came back and we talked. And we would meet a couple times over the next month, and he would just check and see how I was doing. He cared about me as the person, not me, the athlete. And the other one was this past spring when he went through a snowstorm on 4 days' notice to make my dad's funeral. And one of the reasons I consider myself the most fortunate man in the world, one is my wife and kids, but another is I ran for Al, and he wasn't the greatest man in my life. My dad was. This jacket I wear was my letter jacket that I never wore. I gave it to my dad for Christmas. And this was his winter jacket the last 20 years. My dad never said no when I asked him to play. I think about that a lot. He would shovel the driveway of all the neighbors. We lived on a dead-end street, and before the day would start, he'd be done having shoveled the sidewalks. He'd volunteer at all my track meets. I had a good friend with special needs, and when my coach walked away, when he wasn't finished with the 200 meters doesn't take very long, my coach stopped paying attention, and my dad would get on the track screaming for Brett to finish, to run through the line, because it meant that much to my dad. But there's two stories that stick with me that I'll never forget. And one is a 7th grade wrestling tournament. When I'd wrestled that year, finished the year 12-5, thought I was pretty good. And they put you up against other people of your weight, so it wasn't really how good you were. It was more like the coaches meet before to say, all right, who's the worst? Let's put them together. Who's the best? And try and make it fair. And I entered a tournament that didn't do that. And I showed up wearing basketball shoes, and the other people had real attire. Well, needless to say, I went 0-3 and was pretty devastated. And I can still picture it in the parking lot. And I was crying my eyes out, just of embarrassment. And my dad just sat there in the car, rubbing my back, telling me how much he loved me, and just waited till I was done. And then we drove home. And the last one is from my dad's funeral, when a guy came up to me and said, you don't know me, you don't need to remember a name, but you need to know the story. My dad was a pastor, and this guy was given my dad as his mentor. And so he went to meet with my dad on his first day, and he was 40 when he went to seminary, so he was older, starting off as a pastor. So he's 42 at the time, getting ready to start his first pastoral position. And he brings a notebook, and he's getting ready to write down some notes and take down some good knowledge from my dad. And my dad says, put down the notebook, follow me. And they went to the janitorial closet, and he handed him a mop. He said, you want to know what the first thing about leadership? Is servanthood. Let's clean the church. And that's where it's no surprise my dad's favorite Bible verse was Mark 10:45. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. You see the link between the two most influential men in my life, Al and my dad, was not that they were there during the good times, but they both loved me where I was at. They met me in the depths, and they demonstrated God's love. For this, I'm eternally thankful.